dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease has sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I had heard all things in heaven and in earth. I had heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how the first idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He never wronged me, never gave me insult. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad? Mad then, no, not me. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. Every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. You would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my forehead within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman be so wise as this? And then, when my head was well under me, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. Every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber, and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he passed the night. So you see, it would have been a very profound thing indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious and opened the door. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds and thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he had heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. And you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, with the thick darkness, so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily, steadily. I had my head in it, and was about to open the lantern, when it slipped out of my fingers, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quiet and said nothing. For a whole hour, I did not move a muscle. And in the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in bed and listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently, I heard a slight groan. And I knew it was a groan of mortal terror. It was a low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul overcharged with awe. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, although I chuckled at her. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been saying to himself,
"It's just the wind in the chimney. Just a rat running across the floor. Just a cricket that has made a single chirp."
Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain. All in vain because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before and enveloped the victim. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing the light out, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it until at length a simple dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot out from the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with a perfect distinctness, all dull with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for it directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the sense? Now, I say there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, but even yet I refrained and kept still, and scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, louder and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of the house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror, and this beating grew louder, louder. I thought my heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. I threw open the lantern and leapt into the room. He shrieked once, only once. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor. And then, for many minutes, the heart beat on the muffled sound. At length, it ceased. The old man was dead. I examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. And I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will think no so longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scaffoldings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. The end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking on the street door. I went to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 2 men who introduced themselves with perfect suave. As officers of the police, a shriek had been heard by the neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been roused, and they had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man, I mentioned, was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them, at length, to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and a while I answered true. They chatted of familiar things. Ere long I felt myself getting pale, and wished them gone. I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still they sat, and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained a vividness, until, at length, I found that the noise was not within my ears. Now I grew very pale, but I talked more fluently without even voice. It was a low, dull, quick sound, much a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I arose and argued about trifles in high key with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as excited by fury by the observations of men. but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I sung the tale upon which I was sitting, graded upon the boards, but the noise rose all over all. It increased, it grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no, no. They heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror, but anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear these hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream now or die. And now, again, hark, louder, louder.
Villains, disassemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. There is the beating of the old man's hideous heart.